All right. Welcome to another episode of I Am the Change podcast, brought to you by Dreams to Reality Incorporated, a nonprofit organization geared toward uplifting, inspiring, and empowering communities all over the world. I am your host, Michael Davis, alongside Mr. Jason Redmond.
Hey, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Man, look, so I know usually we have, on Thursdays, we drop our up and coming participant, but school's about to start. So I figured, man, look, why not bring on a principal, talk about education in America, get their perspective. And man, look, I was at a cookout. I was at a birthday party talking about education. And this lady walks up and was like, hey, I heard what y'all are talking about. I need to sit in on this conversation. And so I was like, man, who is this woman? So Dee Moore is the young lady that I'm talking about. Came up, pulled up a chair, sat down, and just went to work in the conversation, man. So I'm gonna let Dee introduce herself, tell a little bit about herself. Man, we're gonna dive in this thing like a swimmer in the Olympics, man. So Dee, you go ahead and tell us about yourself.
So my real name is Delishia Moore. People call me Dee. I am a product of Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I graduated from State University. I have a master's degree in school administration and curriculum instruction. I have worked for the past 20 years in the same school district, Elizabeth City Pasquotank Public Schools. Worked 11 years in the classroom, 6 years as an administrator, and this is my 4th year as a principal. So I am super excited to work and live in the community in which I've been all my life. So this organization, like dream reality, like it's everything, because I never imagined this is what I dreamed about. So to be able to be in this position and then be able to give back some words of wisdom, hey, comes full circle. God is good.
Hey, absolutely. We're just happy to have you on here, man. You making us feel good, man.
Definitely.
Yeah. She gives all these roses right now. I'm gonna smell these roses. All right. So, Mike, you want to go? You go ahead first, man. I'll let you get first.
Okay. Well, so I want to know about this conversation that she jumped in on, and I'm saying I want to know a little bit about that.
So, go ahead, Dee. Tell them what we were talking about.
So I was, of course, being nosy, but anytime about education, my ears perk up. And so I just kind of was listening, and they were talking about schools in Durham. And one of the gentlemen was a former teacher and had served on the school board. I believe Jason was an elementary teacher.
And no, I do accounting. I work in accounting in the elementary school. Yeah. I'm in the classroom. Yeah.
And so we just I just heard them. And so they were talking about hiring and vacancies across North Carolina. And so, of course, like we're no different being here in North Carolina. So when I went over to talk about what it look like now and how it has changed so much, we got off into talking about trauma. And how trauma has really changed the way we do education. A lot has changed over the years, even from when my parents were in school. They were not in segregated schools, but some of my older aunts and uncles attended segregated schools. And when we integrated schools, like education changed tremendously for both races. And even now to where schools are no longer black and white. They are black, white, Hispanics, multi. This will be my first year. Not my first year. This year I even have international teachers working in my building. Wow. So the face of education has tremendously changed over the years. And so we just kind of talked a lot about that. Talked about what my passion is as far as coming to a middle school and what does trauma-informed instruction and discipline look like in a middle school. And so that really was the gist of the conversation. It was really interesting.
Yeah. So, man, so she left out of some key points in the conversation, man. So I'll go ahead and fill the gaps in for you. So I was telling her that it's really hard to get male teachers in a building. And Didi said, I have, how many male teachers do you have in the building, Didi?
15.
15.
And that was really wild. And we talked about where you're getting them from. They are applying. However, sometimes they get looked beyond because we're just looking for them as PE teachers, ISS coordinators, of such. But you have to provide those opportunities for Black males to come into your building. It is essential to what you do as educators, because your Black males are oftentimes, well, I won't say often, but there are times that they are viewed as drug dealers or non-educated. However, and that's not the case. There are a lot of educated Black men who are looking for opportunities to come into our school systems and not just volunteer, not just be volunteer coaches. They're looking for teaching positions. And I think we talked a little bit more because it is harder for Black men who are caregivers or the breadwinners in their homes. The truth of the matter is we got to do better with the salaries that come with those positions to allow them to be educators and breadwinners for their home. Can't do that on $38,000 starting salary. So you just gotta kind of like talk about the benefits of it and how you're gonna change lives, because the money ain't getting them. So you provide those opportunities, and then you sit back and you make sure that the men you're bringing into your building, they then become your recruiters.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that salary is terrible, buddy. It's if I'm not mistaken, at one time North Carolina was like 46th in salaries across the state.
Absolutely.
Across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
Yeah, man. It was bad. It was bad.
So what do we do to change that? Like, I mean, how does that change?
You have to get legislators who understand that it's important. So many things have changed even in my 20 years of being in education. Now, if you come in, so for example, when I came in, I had a bachelor's degree and I was a teacher. And so probably about year number 3 or 4, I decided like, let me go back to school. Education was not my background. I was corporate. And so that's what I knew, but I knew I wanted to be a great educator. And so I did not have the education background. So I decided to get a master's degree in curriculum instruction. Well, once I finished that degree, I got a salary increase, which was 10% of my salary. Mm-hmm. North Carolina no longer does that. If you come into the system with a bachelor's degree and you get a master's degree later, it doesn't matter. They're not going to pay it. What they have said is that there is no proven research that says a teacher with a master's degree is any better than a teacher with a bachelor's degree. So, I beg to differ because I totally disagree. And even if you go out into corporate world with a master's degree, you're going to make more money. But North Carolina teachers have been fighting, and until legislators understand the importance, it's hard. It's hard out there in them streets.
Yes, it's hard out there in the teacher. Yeah. So my question would be like, you're so passionate about what you do, and you came from corporate to the education world. Mm-hmm. Like when I first met you, they talked about you were a manager, so you were managing the situation. First year teacher in the classroom, what do you tell them as far as like classroom management? Like what is your things, like what is your point for them?
So my biggest point, in actually 2 reasons for coming into education, which is really crazy. The first reason was because I had 3 children, 2 Black sons and 1 Black daughter. And what I noticed was a couple of things. One, if your parent was in education, your child got treated a little differently. Mm-hmm. You knew a lot more about policies and procedures to get your children in certain classes. The communication was, they talked to you differently when you were in the system. If you didn't, then you had to fight for everything that you got. So my son was in elementary school, my oldest son, and he had some behavior issues. So the assumption was that he was being raised by a single mother. That was not correct. All three of my children were being raised in a home with a mother and a father, and they all had the same mother and father, and we both worked. So, having to get beyond that stigma and helping people understand, I have expectations for my children.
Right.
And so, like, that frustrated me. But then the other piece is working in corporate. I had the luxury of hiring high school students who had no concept of what work ethic, like no understanding of coming to work on time or calling out because there's a party going on and I don't want to go to work. So asking them to mop a floor. I was a store manager for Taco Bell, so asking them to mop a floor, and they have no idea how to mop a floor. No idea, like standing up there to the register and don't know how to count change back. So I'm just like, what in the world is going on in education? Like, what is happening? And so I felt like at that time, how was I going to make a change? Was to go back to those high schools, one, share my experience as a manager, and be able to teach them those employability skills that I felt like somebody was missing the mark. And I'll tell you what was crazy about that, because whenever I told kids that I was a store manager for Taco Bell, they kind of look at you like, oh, you just work at Taco Bell. And I said, let me help you understand something. $25,000 pay cut to come from Taco Bell to your classroom teacher. Stop looking down restaurant managers because corporate is paying a whole lot better.
Yes, they are
in public education. So, that kind of opened up the eyes and just kind of me being able to share my experience, like, don't knock Taco Bell or any other establishment that is paying people minimum wage jobs. It's, you still have those opportunities to move up.
Yeah, because those retail jobs, man, they pay. They pay.
Especially when you get up to management.
Some of them pay like weekly and bi-weekly. Yeah.
Yes.
Not a bad little gig. And they direct deposit.
Exactly.
Yeah. True.
So earlier you talked about the school system has changed because of dealing with trauma. What type of traumas do you deal with? Well, first of all, being when you were in the classroom.
Wow, Michael. I worked in a high school for 16 years. I worked in elementary school for 1 year, and this will be my 4th year in a middle school. And I tell people all the time that the trauma that I have seen in middle school is far beyond anything that I saw in 16 years of in a high school.
Wow.
Classroom. I can remember one time, couple things. One, I went up to go and hug a student, and she jumped back from me. And so didn't know why. She ran out of the classroom in tears. So I went to go and see a guidance counselor, like, what's going on? Like, what can I do? Like, what did I do? Come to find out that this student had witnessed her father murder her mother, and had strangled her mom. So me coming towards her to hug her reminded her just like that of that, and sent her in a different space. I had another student that I got him to stand up in front of the class to do, I always had I taught, public speaking was my thing. I just felt like people need to be able to express themselves. And that was always important to me, classroom teacher, is teaching them public speaking skills. And so it was his turn to get up in front of the class. And so he just kept saying, I can't do this. And I said, you can do it. And the class was encouraging him. He froze. And when I say he froze, he had a seizure because the stress of that situation had caused him to completely go to a whole different place in his head. Ambulance had to be called. And so I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world? So gang banging, definitely. I will never forget. I had a student in my classroom who was intimidating another student. And I watched this young man every day, like scared to death. He was always the last one to come into class, or he was the first one. And he always had this look of fear on his face. And I'm like, held him back one day for lunch and said, let's just talk, what's going on? And he shared with me that one of the students in the classroom had threatened to kill him if he did not bring drugs in the school. And he was afraid to do that. So, and he happened to be in this class with him, right? So me being who I am, he has his brand is what we call him, his red handkerchief hanging out of his pocket, right? So he walked in and I said, hey, you know you're not supposed to have that handkerchief hanging out of your class. This is my school. Y'all don't tell me what to do. Wait a minute. Homes out there might belong to you, but this space up in here belongs to me. The handkerchief out of his pocket, I threw it on the floor and I stepped all over it. He takes that desk and he throws it and he says, if we was out there in them streets, I would kill you. I said, okay, that's good to know. I took all of my kids and told them go stand out there in the hall. And I took my teacher's desk and I pushed it in front of that door. And I said, now we're on a fair playing ground. Show me what you got. Because ain't but one person going up out of here, me or you. And so, of course, like that was very interesting. The kids are running, going to get the principal, the school resource officer. Like our teacher needs help. They got the door. I'm not opening up this door. I'm not letting y'all in here. If he is that bad, you got to show me that you're that bad. Yeah. So he just let me, like, you know, going through the whole let me out. No, you're gonna have to, like, because what I had to show them is that this is my space. The only game banging up in here is that we're doing is to make sure that you can get across that stage for graduation. And that we are a family and that I'm going to protect you. This mama bear, you mess with one of mine, you messing with all of mine. So to say that was his last, but the point was proven. And those kids, like that was a forever relationship. It was a lot. Being in that classroom, and I guess it prepared me for what I had to endure. Still, middle school is a whole different development of children.
So I just gotta be, I'm gonna be nosy. I had to sit up in my seat on this one. Whatever happened to the young man, the gangbanging young man?
What do you think happened? He went to prison.
Oh man.
Probably several years later, went to prison on drug-related charges. You know, of course, seeing him in a newspaper that had meant some community shootings that he had been involved in. Crazy part is I saw him maybe about a couple weeks ago and he had dropped his daughter off. And so he pulls this, he said, Miss Moore, is that you? And I looked in the car and I said, yes, is that, where you been? He said, Miss Moore, man, he stopped his car in the middle of the road and he ran to my house and he says, you don't know how much you saved my life that day. And I said, so how so? Like, tell me. He said, because I realized at that point that there were people who were not going to put up with me. He said, and I had a lot of time to think about what you said to me that day and many other people that tried to save my life. So he said, I appreciate you and what you did for me. So we make a difference.
Hey man, you out here leaving your mark on people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's I think it takes a special person to be a classroom teacher. And Yeah. When I got my master's degree in education leadership, it talked about one of the classes I don't remember nothing else about these classes I took, but just one thing. It talked about you have a better chance of an adolescent making a good decision than a teenager. And I was like, what? They said, yeah, because the teenager's brain is developing. And when the brain is developing, they got so many neurons and things going on, exploding in the head. But a younger person, their brain is where they are at that moment. They haven't gone through that stage, so they can make a better decision because they'll think logically at that moment, where somebody else won't.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads me into the discussion that we were having about trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And how trauma impacts the brain of of kids from ages typically 1 to 8, and then how it changes from 8 to 13, and then from 13 to 18, and so on. And I had the opportunity absolutely to see how that changes. For example, working in an elementary school and having a child that has lost a parent is very different than a child in middle school that loses a parent compared to a child in high school that loses a parent. What I noticed is that the kids that are in elementary school are much more resilient. Mm-hmm. If someone steps in and plays that parental role for them, they are able to keep moving because maybe 3 or 4 years later, I'm not going to say that they forget, but those memories start to fade. Right. Where in a middle school, they have spent a lot of time being nurtured by that parent. Mm-hmm. And because of those neurons and that brain not completely still developed, they have a hard time dealing with grief, separation, changing the atmosphere. Where in high school, when that same situation happens to them, they are then prepared a little more to be independent. Where middle school is just is a travesty for them. And they just can't, for them, the world has ended. And it you really have to get school psychologists involved because it is far beyond what any administrator or classroom teacher can do to support them, especially when they just kind of feel like all hope is lost.
Yeah. I know we talked about, because we were talking about how my school is going to have, this is the first year they're going to have a trauma unit, for lack of better words. And I'm on that unit and I was so excited about it, man. It's like, to me, it's like trauma is so rooted within the Black family and within the Black community, within communities in general. And it's just how we deal with trauma, how we process it, how we compartmentalize it, and how we take that information and go forward with it. So Michael, I was telling the story about how I don't swim anymore. And one of the reasons I don't swim anymore, because when I got in, I went on a vacation and I dove in the water and I was, I realized at that moment I don't swim. And the problem was I was in the water and I realized I don't swim. So when I got off the boat, when I got back on the boat, I realized, hey man, this swimming thing is not for me. And I started thinking about what happened. And so it went back to another vacation that I went on and I was swimming I got off the boat, swam to the island, and I realized, man, I'm a little tired. I'm not going to be able to swim back. And that swim back, hey man, it hit the halfway point and then bloop. I hit the water, bloop, and I was under the water, I had a breaststroke. Then I got to the boat and I was like, man, I got to get back on this boat because if I don't get on this boat, I'm gonna die. And I'm pushing people out the way. I get back on the boat. But at that moment, I realized when I got back on that boat the second time, I realized that incident caused me not to want to get back in the water. So I can only imagine like somebody witnessing their dad kill their mom, strangle her, how you compartmentalize that trauma to never want somebody to have anybody else have a physical touch on that person, to physically touch you. Mm-hmm. So, but like that's a lot to have to deal with. You're talking about with children, like an adult, it's got to be hard, but with children, it's got to be even worse because they don't know how to express themselves and what they're feeling. So, but yeah, it was. So I'm excited about having it, but so I'll be calling you up like, hey, Dee, got a question.
So what is the trauma team like? What does it consist of? What is it like
at the school?
Yeah.
So at our school is going to consist of course, the principal. The role I serve at the school is the bookkeeper. You'll probably have some classroom teachers, counselors, and then there'll be some other administrators in there. But Dee, you were telling me that there's a resource that'll come out, train everybody, and they'll help facilitate stuff.
So I'm not sure if you kind of pay attention to what's going on nationally, but prior to COVID, they began to start having conversations about mental health.
Mhm.
So the new term that's been thrown out there is social emotional, the social emotional well-being of not just children, but also staff members.
Mhm.
So what we do is our work has begun trauma-informed instruction and discipline. And there is an organization through the North Carolina Public School Forum called the North Carolina Resilience and Learning. And what that team does is work with any school system who is interested in learning those practices. So as Jason and I were having a conversation, God had a funny way of just how he set me up, right?
Right.
Middle school happened to be the place in my life that was most trauma. My mom tried to commit suicide several times. She became addicted to pain medicines. And nobody in middle school ever knew this was going on for me because my fear was if someone knew, they were going to take me out of the home. I was an academically gifted student, so I performed very well in class. I wasn't a discipline issue. I just didn't want to bring any attention to myself. By the time I got to high school, I had people there that were members of my church. And so they knew some of the things that I was going through, but still not the extent of everything. It also raising children, like it is hard to raise kids in middle school. So that was traumatic for me because my son, my oldest and my youngest were like, I wanted to divorce them and give them away and get them back when they got to high school because they were so bad. So I'm just like, when I was notified that I was going to be the principal of a middle school, and I was like, God, like I've been asking for this job, but you got a funny way of doing things because like middle school is traumatic for me. And so I just felt like, okay, this is an opportunity for God to heal you over all of the things that you had overcome. Until I realized I hadn't overcome them. I pushed them to the side and not dealt with them. And so I had to quickly realize what my triggers were, because those triggers came in the form of other adults. Those triggers came in the form of kids that were having to deal with situations just like I had when I was in middle school. And I found myself stuck in a place where it was hard for me to come to work. It was hard for me to push through some days to kind of help them because I was stuck. And I realized that in order for, when North Carolina Resilience and Learning came along, it was like God saying, I'm going to send you a life raft, because I was drowning, right? And not even realizing that I was drowning and that I was becoming depressed. And my first year of a principalship, I got in a car accident. So it was just how much, like the trauma, like what in the world are you?
What else can you put on me, Lord?
And so like that, it was a lot. It was just a lot. And I knew I did not have the skills to overcome everything that just kept happening and happening and happening. So North Carolina Resilience and Learning came in, and the first work they started doing was with the administrators. I have a team. I have a principal, myself, 2 assistant principals, one, at that time I had 1 guidance counselor, and we were struggling. We were struggling every day, but they came in and they started working with us. And teaching us ways that we could deal with our trauma. And they began to start talking to us about fight and flight. Like that's the typical response for most people. When you're going through those situations, you either stand there and fight or you run away. And so to cope, and then figuring out what our triggers were. The first mind-blowing activity they did with us was called an ACEs survey. It's an adverse childhood experience survey, okay? And it wasn't something that was mandatory. Staff could volunteer. There were some that would they didn't want to do it. But I probably had about 85% of my staff that participated. And so the questions range from, did you live in a home with a parent that's ever been incarcerated? Have you ever been sexually assaulted? Did you live in a home where you had one parent that was either on drugs or abused alcohol? Did you live in a home where you had abuse. Now, us living in Black homes, like getting cussed out and called stupid, and like we thought that was normal, right? So to go through this survey and answer all these questions, your score would range from a 0 to a 10. The higher your score, the more you were to not be able to deal with trauma. Or you had more health issues, because the higher your score and the longer you had been in that experience, you started having health problems, stress, high blood pressure, overweight. My score was a 7.
Oh God.
And that's just from childhood. That didn't include adulthood. That is just what I dealt with in my home from the grade of K through 12. Let me tell you something. I looked around that room and noticed that there were other people's score who was higher than mine. And we weren't all Black. There were white people in that room. There were Jamaicans. There were Hispanics in that room. There were males, there were females, and we just like, at that moment, we were all in tears, okay? I had staff members that had been sexually assaulted. I had staff members that had been raped. I had staff members that lived in homes. My restorative facilitator's mother went to prison for 20-something years. Like when I tell you, it opened up, they had to have counselors on hand for us, because it was a while, like for those of us that had pushed it and just kept moving, we hadn't even realized. Like even now, like dealing with some of my staff, for example, my mom became addicted to pain meds. And out of that session, I found out another teacher is currently living in that same situation. Wow. So when she came to me and she's in tears, like, Miss Moore, how did you survive? I said, I don't know. I was 12 years old. I was the adult in my home I don't know how I survived. So like that was one situation. Then I had another teacher who was, had an issue. He went to a school where a woman physically abused him. So anytime I gave him an ultimatum, like, okay, because here it is, like I love kids. This is what we're doing. Period. Like, I don't want to hear it. It's what's good for kids. I don't do dream killers. If you want to kill your kids' dreams, find your job. It triggered him. And one day he walked in my office and he slammed my door, and this man lost his mind. I'm like, I'm going to fight you today. However, it was a trigger for him.
Gotcha.
And so because so that helped me help my staff, because it recognized that they have triggers. And sometimes children saying or doing something would trigger them. But if you live in a home where counseling is not for Black families, period, like we don't go to counselors.
No, we don't.
If you went to the counselor, your mama took you to the pastor or the people from the church, and we didn't go to professionals.
Yeah,
so
pray it out of them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that changed for us. And so we have done some work with Rayshawn Miller out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And let me tell you something. I texted him last week and I said, Rayshawn, I need you. Like, I need an appointment, because what I recognize is that still sitting in this job, in this seat, that the pressures are real. And I'm in a situation where when things happen, I can't always pick up the phone and call somebody to share, because I'm dealing with confidential stuff all the time. And if the wrong person, they go out and tell everything, then, hey, I put myself out there. Doesn't mean that I still don't need someone to talk to. I still need to, there are times when I don't want to be strong. I need a good cry. I can't tell my husband everything, because as a man, he's a protector.
He's gonna try to fix it.
Yes, he does.
Hey, I understand. I understand. You gotta fix it, man. We can't.
So for us to be better adults and educators, we got to deal with our trauma first. So it helped kids. And so I always start my school year off and I ask my teachers to share your story. Like, you'd be surprised. I'm not telling you to tell everything, but prior to COVID, I had I brought all my students in the gymnasium, and I shared my story. And I talked to them about what I went through when I was in middle school and how I overcame, and how I was a girl that lived in a home, and what I went through with my mom. We had food stamps. EIC, which is Economic Improvement Council, paid our rent. Sometimes we had to go to the church to help utilities stay on.
Benevolence.
You know?
Yeah.
Didn't know I was poor. My mom just did what she had to do, but there were still some other demons that were there that nobody knew about. And so, like, but I told them, you cannot use that as a crutch. You cannot use that. The other piece to the work that we did with North Carolina Resilience and Learning and the ACEs survey is you can reverse the long-term effects of trauma by putting positive people in your life. So if I can change how some of these teachers think and feel, and make sure that they know that you can start dropping seeds of positivity in these kids, we can change their lives. And so when you talk about when I say the best thing that happened, I mean that facetiously, because when I say this, trauma hit Elizabeth City, and I know y'all watch the news. Trauma hit the whole city, it hit the whole county. And it hit all of us. So it did not matter about rich, poor, Black, white. It hit us because when Andrew Brown was killed, our schools are served by sheriff deputies. And it happens to be sheriff deputies that whatever, they don't want to use the word, that killed Andrew Brown.
Yeah, you can speak how you want to on here. Yeah.
Andrew Brown had a son at Elizabeth City Middle School. And so now that trauma had changed because people had many different opinions. Right. It didn't change the fact that we have a student that no longer has a father. And so there were other sheriff deputies that were getting death threats. However, again, we have students here whose parents work for the sheriff department. And of course, hey.
Everybody's got opinions, yeah.
It did. And so we ended up having to have an activity for our staff. I just remember one of the teachers making the comment about more white people are killed by law enforcement than Blacks. And so one of my Black male teachers made sure that he understood, but let's look at why white Americans are being killed. They're being killed for assaulting or actually doing something to harm a police officer.
Yeah.
Black men are being killed by police officers because of the color of their skin.
Don't forget women.
Yes, absolutely. Black people.
Yeah.
And what was crazy is, so we have a county that's right beside us, Camden County. And the very next week, a white American pulled a gun out on the police, on their sheriff deputies, and they shot him in the leg.
I'm assuming he's in jail.
So it brought a lot of feelings on both sides of it.
Yeah.
And I can completely, I think the biggest part for us in that whole trauma for us was people were afraid to have an opinion. And like I said, even to that white teacher, you are entitled to your opinion.
Exactly.
That we have done with North Carolina Resilience and Learning has taught us about respecting each other's opinion. And your environment, your upbringing, a lot of factors play into how we all feel about what we feel. But at the end of the day, you are entitled to feel the way you feel. And I have no right to tell you, you don't have a right to feel that way. I can't tell you that you're wrong for feeling that way. You have that right. And I have to respect the fact that that's your opinion. And it's not that we're pushing each other's agenda on the other. To a common ground where we say, you know what, this is a place where we agree to disagree and move on. We still respect each other as colleagues. I don't feel any type of way because you feel that way, because I don't want you to feel any type of way because I feel like Black Lives Matter.
Right.
You know, so it's just, yeah, that was interesting for our entire community, because like social media, you know,
y'all was famous for about a couple months, but
yeah,
Elizabeth City was a hot topic on the TV.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna steal your line again, Michael. So I know you have a host of things to do in that school you're in, because I was like, man, so Michael, when we first came on, I was like, man, you get me the office background? She's like, no, I'm actually in the office. I was like, dang. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
So you're on the ground right now.
Yeah. She's grinding. So I'm gonna steal your line, Michael. So like you gave us a lot of information, but give the viewers something they can hang their hat on for the rest of this week, coming from Dee Moore. A little word of inspiration.
A little bit.
Because you done dropped some nuggets on us today. I want you to know that.
So if I could drop a nugget, I would say that we are all responsible for every child. I tell my parents all the time that what you do will weigh a whole lot more than what you say. Children watch what we do. They forget what we say. And it's impressionable. And so even to my educators, to my teachers, I say to them, even the worst child sitting in your classroom is going to get it together one day. And you may miss an opportunity from getting a free meal in McDonald's, to a discount off of your breaks, to a forgiveness on a loan. Everybody is not going to be a doctor. Everybody is not going to be a lawyer. But everybody is going to grow up and they're going to become something. And so you don't want to miss the opportunity in making the difference in a child's life because you can't get over yourself. Get your own way and understand that we all have a responsibility to make these children prepared for their future, not ours. Don't never forget, they're going to be making the decisions for you by the time you get ready for retirement. So you want to make sure that you're impressionable and that they're listening to what it is that you're trying to get them to learn really early in life. And so like, I'm always trying to provide those opportunities, talk to my kids, like, it feels good to be in McDonald's in the line. And I tell them this story all the time. And the student in front of me, when I got up there to pay for my meal, he had already paid for my meal. And when he got up and pulled up and he said, Miss Moore, if I ever see you in this line, I got you. And that makes me feel good because I make a difference. Like, you know, it kind of words, they're not hard. But if you think about even the worst teacher that you've had from K-12, you remember that teacher. And you can make or break a child. And so I don't ever, again, my cliche is don't be a dream killer. Don't kill these kids' dreams. You know, of course, they all want to be football players. And I tell mine, well, let me help you, okay? I ain't stopping you from being a football player. Let me help you manage your money so that you don't have to hire an accountant who's going to steal from you, so that you can make that money work for you forever. Like, let me teach you those skills. Let me teach you how to read. So when you're reading that contract, they ain't getting over on you. And that makes a difference. That gets the kids like, oh, okay. Because like the reality of it, And I tell my kids, if they're not looking at you in middle school, like boo-boo, the likelihood of you becoming a professional athlete is slim. Now, I ain't gonna tell you can't do it because you can turn it around. Mm-hmm. That's what you want to do. Let me help you with the other things that you're gonna need to do that.
Yeah. The statistic is, I think it's 1% of all collegiate football players go into the NFL.
Right.
Yeah.
But that means they got to get in college though, right?
That's me right there.
There it is.
That is the key. That is the key. That is the key. Well, look, hey, Didi, look, it's we dropped this on Thursday, and man, look, I don't want to hold you because I know you got a ton of stuff to do, and look, I don't. We could talk all day long because this is trauma education futures, man. This is my wheelhouse right here.
Well, listen. You called me this time, right?
I did.
I'm going to be calling you and Michael because I have an organization in my building called the Young Gentlemen's Club.
I'm there.
And they are a group of males who we have kind of put together that society says they're not going to do well, but we say something different. And so it would be an amazing opportunity for you all to share how you've taken this podcast and turned it around and done something totally different because it's outside of the box, right?
I mean,
it's something else.
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm down.
Absolutely, that's dope. Yeah.
So, point of clarity, Michael's in Seattle, Washington.
But I can be on a Zoom on the big screen or something. To
absolutely.
Talk.
Absolutely.
It'll work out for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I can't speak for Michael, but I know I'm in. So
I'm in. Nah. So, what?
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm down. Yeah.
This episode was this was amazing. And then hearing about the stuff about middle schools is crazy because I went through like one of my biggest traumas in middle school. So it's like because I was in my mom got addicted to drugs and I was in foster care and stuff like that. And I remember there was a teacher that I was about to like run out of school. I was in tears one day and there was a teacher that came out, like chased after me, like grabbed me in the middle of the street, literally pulled me back in school, talked to me, sat me down. I mean, it was crazy. It changed my life. So that whole conversation just blew my mind. And I was sitting back listening to it. It was amazing. So yeah, I'm down for whatever. You want me to be a part of for sure.
Thank you.
No, hey, not a problem at all. We got it. Definitely.
Each one, reach one.
Hey,
absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, man. Look, I'm gonna let Michael take us out of here because this exit, I have a hard time doing it. But yeah.
All right, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, if this is your first time tuning in, please like, subscribe, and continue to follow us on this journey. If you've been rocking with us, keep on keeping on because we got a lot more amazing episodes to come. I want to thank my co-host, Mr. Jason Redmond. It's always great, brother.
Hey, man, this was a great one, man.
And I want to thank our guest, Ms. Didi Moore. It's been a pleasure. It's been amazing. And I know you're going to change some lives and do some amazing things as a principal at middle school. So thank you for being on the show. All right. We are Dreams to Reality, a nonprofit organization geared toward uplifting, inspiring, and empowering communities all over the world. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And remember, our goal is not to be better than anybody, but together we can achieve better for everybody. Thank you and have a good night.
All right.